Hello, welcome once again to Stuff and Things, where I like to talk about stuff and occasionally even things. I'm your good friend Bradley, and today is a Sunday Stuff and Things. And on this Sunday Stuff and Things, we have stuff and things to talk about, including upcoming videos, things that you can look forward to on Stuff and Things YouTube and Stuff and Things Patreon. We're going to talk about a photograph by photographer Henri Cartier-Bresson. I think this is going to be fun. It's one of his most famous photographs, and it's often considered one of the most famous, one of the most important photographs in the, I hate using this term, but quote, street photography or documentary style photography. We're going to be looking at that picture, and I want to kind of explicate it, like we used to have to do with poetry when I was in high school or college, where we talk about why is this photograph good? We could maybe touch on why it made such a huge impact when it was originally taken and displayed, but does it still have that impact now? What about it is aesthetically pleasing? What about it makes it a good photograph? And is it still a good photograph? And this is coming from, me. I am not an art critic. I am not an expert, but somebody who I think has a reasonably good eye, and I'm into photography. So hopefully, more people who are into photography have been watching my channel now because I do a lot of photography related stuff, and I think this will be a fun segment. We're gonna have to talk a little bit about Seattle sports and kind of the fun atmosphere that's been going on in the Pacific Northwest recently, and then we'll have your questions, comments, and feedback in hashtag askstuffandthings, and then we'll close out the show with Patreon shoutouts and updates. Let's get into it. All right, gang, so what can you look forward to on Stuff and Things YouTube and Stuff and Things Patreon? Well, this coming week on YouTube, we will be doing my review of this, the little SUNPAK Auto 101 camera flash. I purchased this to use with my Leica M4, because I needed a really compact flash that also had some auto capabilities. And because the Leica M4 doesn't have a hot shoe, it only has these PC sync ports on the back of the camera, right there. I needed a flash that had PC sync capability, and so this one has this little cable that you can plug into the PC sync port, only takes 2 AA batteries, really compact, really great, a fantastic little flash. So if you're looking for a good flash for your vintage film camera, something that's compact, you can take with you all the time, this might be it. So check out that review coming up this week on Stuff and Things YouTube and Patreon. The week after that, exclusive to Patreon, we're going to be doing, finally, a review of a Padron 2000 Natural. I've talked about them in the past. They were kind of my favorite burning stick, but, and sort of like my Elizabethan of burning sticks. Elizabethan, my favorite pipe blend. And this one is this is a burning stick that I could have every day, something that's kind of light and, I don't know, just hits the spot. And I had never really done a review, so we were doing kind of a review / revisited video discussion on that. That'll be exclusive to Patreon. Then after that, on YouTube and Patreon, I'm going to try again to do the listening party for Nirvana Nevermind. Months ago, before the channel originally got demonetized completely, I was posting these listening party episodes. I had done Blondie Parallel Lines from 1978. I had done The Strokes' Is This It? And I was trying to do Nirvana, but then my channel got completely demonetized. I was kicked out of the partner program. And what happens with those videos is I don't make any money off of them, but you kind of have to have monetization, because if you don't, then I think this is how it worked. I think this is why I couldn't do the Nirvana video, because since I didn't have any monetization, they just blocked it completely instead of having ads on it and then giving the revenue to the rights holder. So hopefully that's going to work now that I've remonetized. If not, I don't know, it might have to be a Patreon exclusive or something, but I'm trying to put that video up again. We'll see what happens. I think it would be fun. It's like an hour and a half long or an hour and 20 minutes long. I think it'll be cool if you guys can actually see it. So lots more stuff coming up on YouTube and on Patreon. Stay tuned. There's always more coming up. So I held up this giant book at the beginning of the episode. This is Henri Cartier-Bresson, The Modern Century by the Museum of Modern Art. And this is a fantastic book. I got this, I can't even remember how much I paid, but it was very little, and it was on Amazon, and it's just fantastic. It has an entire survey of Bresson's career. If you don't know, he was a photographer, French, obviously, and he started out kind of in the 30s, but he's mostly known for his post-war output where he became a Magnum photographer. He was a photographer for Magnum Photos. He would travel the world. He took all sorts of reportage, documentary-style photographs, but he's often considered kind of one of the fathers of, makes me cringe, street photography. But he's basically a news photographer, a documentary photographer. I mean, he was around when Gandhi was assassinated in India. He was there when the communists were taking over in China. Like, he was just there in so many interesting historical places and times, a lot of that in Asia and Europe. Just has an amazing body of work. And there's one photograph that he took in 1932 that is often called sort of like the first street photograph or the first snapshot. And we'll look at this better later, but I'm gonna hold this up here. Maybe the camera will kind of pick this up. It was taken in Paris in 1932, and it is Behind the Gare Saint-Lazare by Henri Cartier-Bresson, Paris, 1932. And yeah, this is just often cited as one of the, quote, best, quote, street photographs of all time. And it was kind of taken towards the beginning of his career. He wasn't really doing a lot of professional work yet. And I don't know, it's a really interesting photograph. It gets discussed a lot. It's thrown out there, like I said, as kind of this seminal piece of work, something that was a harbinger of a completely different way of taking photographs. So I thought it would be fun for us to take a closer look at this photograph, go over the historical context a little bit, and just think about together, you guys can let me know in the comments below, whether or not this is a good photograph, whether or not it still has the impact now that it had in 1932, or I think it was first put on display in 1933, and just kind of talk about, what are the aspects of this photograph, the composition, the technique, the history around it. What do we think of this photograph? So let's switch to the computer and we'll take a closer look. All right, so here's the photograph Behind the Gare Saint-Lazare by Henri Cartier-Bresson, taken in Paris in 1932. I'm sure you will love my amazing French pronunciations here. So this is often cited as one of the best, quote, street photographs of all time. It was taken towards the beginning of H.C.B's career. He started out kind of dabbling in photography, doing it as sort of a hobby, and then he sort of had an apprenticeship, and then after World War II is when his real professional career really got going. But a lot of the work that he did in the 30s was stuff that actually, ended up in galleries and exhibitions and things like that. So it's not like this was him as a complete amateur by any means. But this photograph is often considered a very revolutionary photograph, because especially back in the 30s, people weren't taking a lot of pictures like this. And one of the things that kind of made this picture possible is the technology of the time. So Henri Cartier-Bresson was using a little Leica 35mm camera, probably, I would say like a Leica 3 maybe in 1932. Maybe I'm wrong about that. It could have been a Leica 2, but it definitely wasn't a Leica M camera because those hadn't been invented yet. So this would have been one of the screw mount cameras. This picture was probably taken with a 50mm lens. That's what he was using a lot at the time. It was taken at the, again, here's my French pronunciation, Place de l'Europe, outside the Saint-Lazare train station in Paris. And basically, he was looking through a fence and kind of shoved his camera in there, and he saw this scene unfolding, and he snapped a quick photograph. Bresson didn't normally crop his photographs, but this one he did. I have a quote here from him. "There was a plank fence around some repairs behind the Gare Lazare, and I was peeking through the spaces with my camera eye. This is what I saw. The space between the planks was not entirely wide enough for my lens, which is the reason the picture is cut off on the left." So apparently there was some plank action, blurry, probably up close, out of focus plank action here. And apparently the uncropped photograph shows there's kind of like the heavy, sharp shadow of the edge of the plank, and then there's kind of a empty space below the pool that he removed as well. Bresson really was against cropping his photos most of the time, so it's kind of interesting or noteworthy that this one was cropped. And this photograph was first displayed in 1933, I believe, and a print of this photograph sold at Christie's on November 17th, 2011 for $590,455. So pretty crazy. Very famous, very well-regarded photograph. So what is going on in this picture? So obviously we have this man. Looks as though he was traveling on this ladder. We don't know how deep this water is, and that's one of the fun things about photographs, is you have to kind of make it up as you go along, because you weren't there, you don't know the context. All you have is the image, and this image was frozen in time, which was something that's also kind of new for that time. Photographs, especially when photography was first invented in the 19th century, people would have to sit there completely unmoving for seconds to take a proper exposure, and with much higher speed film that was starting to be available around this time, and by that they meant, you know, a 50 ISO or 100 ASA speed film, that was very high speed to them at the time, allowed you to freeze motion more, and that wasn't something that was super common until you started getting to, you know, the early 20th century. So having the movement frozen here, you can see there is some motion blur, and I think also this just not totally in focus. If you look at the ladder here, the ladder is slightly out of focus. It looks like focus is mostly back here on this plane, or maybe these rocks here. And the foreground is, well, it's pretty sharp on these barrel hoops as well. So I don't know. He's got fairly good depth of field here. You can see the buildings in the background are pretty blurry. But then there is motion blur here from this man who is wearing, it looks like a fedora or something like that. He is leaping into this little pool or puddle. We don't know how deep it is. We don't know if he would be plunged to, you know, thigh depth here, but there's this cool dynamic movement that's frozen. Now, one of the things a lot of people talk about with composition is the rule of thirds and how important that can be in proper composition. If we do this and do this, we get these lines, this grid line at, you know, dividing the picture up into thirds, horizontally and vertically. Does it look as though Cartier-Bresson was trying to adhere to the rule of thirds? Not really. You have this fence line up here. You have the figure here, the reflection of the jumping man here, which is almost kind of contained in this box here. But typically, if you were trying to adhere to the rule of thirds, you would try to use the interstices of these grid lines as areas that you would place things. And I think it just goes to show that, you know, maybe that's an okay rule of thumb for when you're just starting to try to do composition, but it's not really necessary to make a photograph interesting or dynamic. And I don't really see much that is trying to adhere to that rule of thirds here at all. If we get rid of the grid, if we just look at some of the things that make up this photograph, we have interesting doubled images, reflections. So we have the man leaping, we have his reflection. We have the fence here, cool, these kind of cool geometric areas that are repeated. So we have the fence here, the reflection of the fence, this man here. I like this pile of rocks because it kind of grounds the entire photograph, and it looks as though, since he did crop this image, he cropped it intentionally to put this pile of rocks right in the middle. And that sort of just gives a weight to the composition to me and kind of anchors the whole thing. The other interesting thing is we have this poster here. I'm assuming it's for some sort of dance troupe or circus or something, I don't know. But you have these leaping figures, or one leaping figure that's repeated, and it kind of echoes and mirrors this man here, but then you also have that mirrored here in the reflection of the puddle. So there's a cool kind of symmetry there. I mean, it's not actual symmetry, but you have him, in his reflection, and then you have the leaping dancer and the reflection of that. You've got some interesting leading lines like the ladder here, these curved pieces of, I'm assuming these are barrel hoops. And this looks like kind of a construction site or something. It looks like a wheelbarrow over here. And I don't know if this was a worker or what. And the fact that it was blocked off, it's like now where they would put a fence up around a construction site. That seems like what was going on here. What do we think about this photograph? If this was taken now, if I took this picture now, would I be excited about it and would I think it was good? Yes, I would like this picture. I don't know if I would have cropped it the same as him. I would like to have seen the whole frame. I think he did take this vertically. So it wasn't as though, you know, he cropped a huge amount of it. I think he just cropped a bit on the left and a bit on the bottom. I would like to see maybe the larger uncropped version to see if I would have cropped it slightly differently. I might have tried to pull this figure a little bit closer to the midline of the photograph. Not exactly the midline, but maybe not quite towards the edge. But if there was that fence there, or I think he said the fence was on the left-hand side. I don't know. It'd be interesting to see, but I kind of do like the fact that this guy's almost like running off the edge of the picture. He said that when he took this, he didn't even notice the dancer on the poster until he had developed that. And that was something I wanted to point out as well, is that a lot of people will look at this and be like, oh, look how he's doubled the leaping man with the leaping figure in the back. Like, it doesn't make the picture any worse that he didn't do it on purpose, but we have to realize that a lot of the times when we get a good picture, it's luck. It's also, it's being in the right place at the right time, it's having proper technique, it's having a good eye, but sometimes we capture things that we don't even realize we're capturing until we look at the photograph later. And that's what happened with Cartier-Bresson here. It doesn't make the picture any less impactful, but we can't ascribe intentionality to things that were unintentional. Sometimes you just get lucky. So I like this picture a lot. I like the dynamics of it. If this were taken now, I don't think anyone would really pay any attention to it. I think it might be put up in a gallery if there was an established photographer who had taken this and it was part of his body of work or her body of work. People might be like, oh, this is a good photograph, we'll take it up. It would not be revolutionary now as it was back in 1932. I still really enjoy it just from a purely aesthetic point of view. I like the geometry of it. I like the repeated shapes. I like the composition. I think it makes, there's kind of this negative dead space with the reflection, and I like how it flattens the reflections, or the pond, the negative dead space, and I like how the reflections get kind of flattened and turned into silhouettes to a certain extent. It sort of takes away the three-dimensional quality of them. The whole thing just looks cool to my eye. I don't think it would be, I'm trying to think of like a famous photographer right now who is still alive. I don't know. I can't think of anyone who is contemporary that people don't talk about photographers the same way that they used to in the 30s and 40s and 50s. Like, you could be a celebrity and be really famous and well known if you are a photographer back then. That's not the case now for the most part. So I don't know if the test as to whether or not this photograph would be considered as important now as it was back then isn't really fair, because no one really cares about photography in the same way, or at least popular culture doesn't care about photography the same way as they did back then. So, you know, as far as just like an art critic or somebody critiquing this, I think they would still like it, but I think it definitely has a lot more impact because of the context of when it was taken and the impact it had back then. But I really do enjoy this photograph. And it's cool. I just enjoy doing this sometimes, where I'll take a picture that has garnered attention, that people have said, this is a good picture. And so then I want to try to pick it apart and determine, okay, if it's good, why? Do I agree with this? Are there things that I'm seeing that other people have seen? Are there things that I'm seeing that other people haven't? Things that other people see that I can't? I just want to look at it and kind of tear it apart and see why it might be good. And I do think this picture is good. I am wearing my Seattle Seahawks sweatshirt right now. I got this from Homage in Ohio, a really cool company that makes some neat fan merchandise. And if you are aware, if you have any interest in sports whatsoever, you will know that currently the Seattle Mariners are playing in the ALCS, the American League Championship Series, As of the recording of this video, they are up 3-2 over the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, some of you hate it when I talk about sports at all. You hate it if I ever talk about the Seahawks. I never really talk about sports other than the Seahawks. So throughout most of the rest of the year, I never talk about any other sports. It's only during football season, because football is the only sport that I don't even really follow it that closely. I follow the Seahawks. I don't watch a lot of games. I watch the Seahawks games. I watch highlights. I'm interested in scores and players and things. But this year, it's a really fun atmosphere in the Pacific Northwest, because not only are the Seahawks doing pretty well and people are pretty optimistic about their chances of maybe making the playoffs, but for the first time in decades, the Mariners are playing for the American League pennant, and it's slightly possible that they could actually go to the World Series, which has never happened before, ever. I think first year for the Seahawks was 76, and then the Mariners were 77, I believe. So both of them before I was born. So I grew up with the Mariners and the Seahawks, and through most of my childhood, neither team was very good at all. It wasn't until we got into the 90s with Edgar Martinez and Ken Griffey Jr. and players like that, where I think they made it to the playoffs in, what was it, 93, 94, 95, somewhere around there. And then in the early 2000s with Ichiro and stuff, they had some success. But for the most part, they've never been to the World Series. They've never won the pennant. They've never been great. And it's interesting to see kind of the parallel between this time and when the Seahawks first made it to the Super Bowl. There was the year in, was it 2012? I'm going to be all confused now. When they made it to the playoffs and there was the whole Beastquake with Marshawn Lynch, people were starting to get more and more excited about the Seahawks. But that Super Bowl year, that was just kind of magical, is when you could see a lot of people really coalescing around the Seahawks. And for me, I had started really following the Seahawks again. I mean, I'd always been kind of a fan, but had never really been super into sports. And I was always very kind of sneering about people who were really, really into sports. And I still might be a little bit, because I don't think anyone should derive so much of their identity from how well their particular sports team might do in their city, or whichever one they decide that they are loyal to. So I was always kind of sneering about that. I liked playing sports a bit as a kid, but I was never a jock kind of guy. I'm sure you could probably imagine that that would be the case just by looking at me or listening to me. But I had a period where I was into, sports cards, baseball cards, football cards. I liked playing sports like, a typical kid, but never got super into it. But I was kind of sneering and maybe a little derisive towards people who were really, really into sports. But those first few years with Russell Wilson in Seattle, I started to soften on that a little bit, because I realized that the shared interest in something like a football team can kind of help you relate to people who you may not otherwise relate to. And it was really cool to see during that Super Bowl year how people were just, it was nice to have a shared thing that was positive that you could talk to people about, and you could feel as though you were part of a community. That's kind of nice. There's nothing wrong with that. And that's kind of a lesson I learned back then, that I shouldn't snare at people being into football. I shouldn't snare at people being into sports and enjoying the camaraderie or the community that can be built up around that. You could still maybe sneer about people who get so crazy about it and get, suicidal when their team loses or something. That's a whole other thing. But it's been fun this year, too, with the Mariners, where I was talking to my little brother. He lives in Texas, and we were talking about the Mariners. They had won the first 2 games against Toronto, and then just got blown out on the second 2 games in Seattle. And it was looking really bad. And I was talking to him about that. I was in the grocery store, and it was just fun, because this older woman overheard me. She's like, "Don't worry, I think they'll get him tonight." And then other people are kind of, chipping in their little things about different players and what's going to happen. It's just, you walk around downtown, there's people who have their shirts on or their hats, people who you wouldn't think you wouldn't think would care at all, like the kind of emo girl who serves me coffee at the coffee shop. She had her Mariner shirt on and was all excited. It's just kind of fun, the shared sense of community. So I don't want to jinx it, but it would be awesome. So now Game 5 has already happened. So the Mariners are up 3-2. They have 2 more to play in Toronto. And I don't know, like, they looked so bad the second 2 games, but then they looked pretty good the third game or the 5th game. We'll see what happens. But it would be amazing to have the Mariners in the World Series, and then in the same year have the Seahawks, make it pretty far into the playoffs. That would just be exciting. I don't know anything about the Kraken. I don't pay any attention to hockey. All right, gang. But now it is time for hashtag Ask Stuff and Things. Remember, if you have a question for me and you would like to answer it on the Sunday Stuff and Things, you can tweet at SAT with the hashtag Ask Stuff and Things, but you probably shouldn't because I never look at Twitter or X or whatever it's called. But if you are a Patreon supporter, you can write to me via Patreon. Go right to the front of the line. I'm making this gesture even though I haven't gotten to that spot in the spiel yet. Or you could hit that super thanks button under this video and go right to the front of the line. Or you can leave questions, comments, and feedback in the comment section of my YouTube videos, just like at Charlie Hoot22 did for last week's Sunday Stuff and Things. Charlie says, I finally got around to joining Patreon at the basic $5 level, and I kept hearing the Starship Troopers meme going through my head when I joined. I'm doing my part. Well, thank you very much for the support at Charlie Woot. I would hope that my Patreon does not turn into a pseudo-fascist, strange, authoritarian regime where we are bent on destroying alien life. I guess, anyway, it won't be a parody of like a horrible authoritarian regime. It should be just me posting videos and you enjoying those videos, and I appreciate it. Next, at Solar Labyrinth says, so we were talking about seasonal affective disorder and how that isn't something that I would typically worry about or something that wouldn't normally affect me, but it is kind of annoying me lately because I want to go out and take pictures. It's driving me freaking crazy because, I worked all week and the weather was decent. We were able to pour flat work and stuff, do concrete. And then all weekend long, it's going to rain. It rained all last weekend. All the time when I have time off, it's just raining. It's kind of annoying me. But anyway, Solar Labyrinth says, here in Florida, I tend to get sad around this time of year when everyone else around the country seems to actually have an autumn. Cool weather, leaves changing, etc. I've lived here over 25 years now, but grew up where there were actual seasons. I still can't get used to having hot weather during Halloween, Thanksgiving, and even Christmas some years. Just does not feel the same. Yeah, I would hate that. I would absolutely hate that. I don't like hot climates. I like visiting them. I like taking a vacation to them. Not that I guess I've done that once in my life when I went to Hawaii for a vacation. Well, I guess short little trips to Texas and Oklahoma and stuff like that. But I would hate to live in a hot area, and I did live in Los Angeles, and I hated the weather in Los Angeles. Loathed it, and it made me angry that other people would talk about like, oh, it's just beautiful here all year long. No, it's annoying. It's annoying to have the same freaking thing day after day, month after month. It's annoying to be sweating in your bed when you're naked and don't even have a sheet over top of you because it's so freaking hot in your apartment. It's annoying to walk out of your house and immediately start sweating even though you haven't exerted yourself to any extent whatsoever. I don't understand why people seem to love hot weather so much. I hate it. It's good at certain times, in certain contexts, but in general, I hate it. Next, we have at Michael Case, 8574, who says, here in the Pacific Northwest, it stops raining on July 5th. Yeah, I mean, okay, so we've talked about the overblown reputation that the Pacific Northwest has for rain. Yes, it rains on quite a few different days, but it usually doesn't rain a lot on those days. So if you look at the actual precipitation totals, like the inches of rain you get, we get less than New York gets in places like that. It's just the days on which it's raining. So when you say it stops raining on July 5th, yeah, kind of maybe, because from July into even late September often, it's just gorgeous, doesn't really rain at all, beautiful, nice, sunny days. But I think a lot of people have the opinion of like, oh, it's when it's rainy season in Japan and it's just raining these torrential downpours all the time. It's not like that in the Pacific Northwest. So you'll get drizzly days and stuff. So even into late spring, early summer, you'll get a little bit of rain, but it's not like crazy heavy rain, usually. In the heavier rain, I shoot my Nikonos cameras. That's some kind of Nikon. I've never heard of that. Fully waterproof and still a Nikon. Whenever I see a satin jacket, I look for the name of the dive bar on the back. Yeah, so when it rains here, I basically have to use my digital camera, my little Fuji X106, because it is weather sealed, and my Leica is not. It would not be good to take this out into a downpour. I'm sure I could get it a little wet and it wouldn't be that big a deal. But yeah, I have to use my digital camera in the rain. And then satin jackets, yeah, I know what you mean by the dye bar jacket. The starter jacket is a little bit, maybe slightly more upper class version of that kind of jacket. At Smashing Artful says, glad you're healing from your various injuries. I am also starting to feel those miles. Yeah, I was talking about my boiled feet, my back, all these things. Actually feeling pretty good. My feet are okay. The only thing is just the itching as the new skin is covering. Like there are no more gaping wounds on my feet. They've all been covered over by skin, but it's still healing on top and it's just really itchy. But my back's been pretty good. Everything's been pretty good. So I can't complain. I could complain, but I won't. And then we have some feedback from the MacBaron HH Bold Kentucky Revisited video that I posted on Patreon last week. Steve Calendar says, now I will need to revisit that. Good luck. I hope you have a tin put away somewhere because they are no longer making it. Futterman Bucker says, it's not quite the same, but Amphora makes a Kentucky blend that is similar and is still in production. Yeah, I have never had it myself. I hadn't heard that people thought it was that similar. I would say, what's the closest? You know what I haven't had in forever was Orlik Old Dark Fired. I need to get a tin of that again and see how I feel about that as a dark fired blend and comparing it to Bold Kentucky. Bold Kentucky, I ended up liking it a lot more than I did when I initially reviewed it back in 2018 or whenever that was. So I want to revisit maybe some more of these. Have I done a revisited on Old Dark Fired? I don't think so. I want to revisit some more of these dark fired burley blends, Kentucky blends, and see what I think. So that's something to keep in mind for the future. But gang, thank you for that feedback. Please keep it coming in. It really helps make the show go. But now it is time for the very best part of the show, and that is where we thank our Patreon supporters. Remember, if you would like to support Stuff and Things on Patreon, there is a link in the description box below, and it would be much appreciated. $5 gets you in. So what do you get if you support Stuff and Things on Patreon? Well, first of all, you are just helping me make these videos. If you like anything that I post on YouTube or on Patreon, your support on Patreon keeps me going, makes that possible. But if you're missing the pipe stuff that used to be on YouTube, I had to move it from YouTube to Patreon because YouTube will not let me be part of the partner program if I have the pipe stuff on the YouTube channel. So $5 a month gets you into the Patreon. We have the archive of my old pipe blend reviews. They are, I think I've got over 50 of them now, or around 50. You'll get a new one of those every week, or a new repost of the old one every week. We're working through them. I think we're through late 2015 now. There are still quite a few to go, but there are quite a few on there already. All the new exclusive pipe stuff that I do is posted on Patreon, and then you get access early and ad-free to the YouTube videos on Patreon as well. So every week we like to shout out those who support Stuff and Things at $25 or more a month. The producers of Stuff and Things. People like Jason Buckner, Arcturus, Ashes of the Phoenix, The Friendly Piper, GreatGrol, Glenn, Just Glenn, David Severin, Nicholas James, Kyle Whitmore, Mr. Gibson, and Chris Caughey. And of course, the Maniacs, the crazy people who support Stuff and Things at $100 a month. People like Stolid and Dependable, Bob Magee. And we'll never forget our dearly departed friend and Hall of Fame member, Peter Straub. Gang, what can you look forward to exclusively on Patreon this week? Well, first of all, you will get the SUNPAK Auto 101 video on Monday as opposed to on Tuesday. Early ad-free, but then from the archives this week on Thursday will be a big one. This is Esoterica Tobaciana Penzance, often considered one of the best blends ever made. Some people say that, and it's kind of like, is this photograph that I showed you by Henri Cartier-Bresson the best street photograph ever? Debatable, but at least it's in the conversation. A lot of people love Penzance. It has kind of a mythical quality, so check out that review. That was from 2015 as well, from the archives, Esoterica Tobaciana Penzance. this Thursday on Patreon. Gang, thank you so much for watching. Please stay tuned for all the good stuff coming up. But until next time, until we meet again, I've been your good friend Bradley. You've been the audience. This has been Stuff and Things on a Sunday Stuff and Things. Go Hawks, go Mariners. I'll see you later.